Good evening, fellow classmates. Tim Frederick reporting in here. For this week in student development theory, we're talking about a couple of different things, actually. Um, First article we were requested to read was Ever Upward and No Turning Back, Social Mobility and the Identity Formation Among These First-Generation College Students by Scott Roberts and George Rosenwald. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just list all of these off first. There's only 3 readings this week, not as heavy as it has been. I will say that some of these articles were heavy in the fact that there's a lot of processing that had to go through a couple of them, at least on my side. The second article is Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Transgender College Students with Disabilities. A look at multiple cultural minorities by Deborah Harley, Teresa Nowak, Linda Gassaway, and Todd Savage. And finally, we have an article relating to disability, identity, and difference by Tom Shakespeare. So it seems more like a dissertation type article, type paper, type deal. Alright, so as you already know, your prompter this week, I'm wearing this fancy little bow tie and this little, I don't even know what I'm doing. But the first article we had to look at was quite substantive, and it's dealing with first-generation students and further the social mobility and their identity formation. Now, this one for me I could relate to very heavily, specifically on, if we go through on page 95, they pose the question, a young working class person's commitment to higher education signals to herself as well as to those who count that she's seeking a life different from other important respects. And it was kind of talking about like why this student was choosing to go from being working class to a higher educated student. Throughout these articles, I had a lot of questions, and trying to narrow these questions down were really hard. But for me, I'm going to focus on the first 2 articles, the one by Harley and the one by Roberts. And so you'll find that towards the end of this, I will talk about my questions regarding these 2. I had quite a few from the second article, but we'll get there in a second. So for the first article, it was really talking about the first generation students going to college and higher education. It mentioned in the beginning that it was moving away from talking about high school students and whatnot. And so one of the things that Roberts brought up was that there's also often a dissonance between the identity formation of being a higher education student and going and receiving a college degree, whether it be associate's, bachelor's, or even a master's degree, and mixed with parents who don't necessarily have that kind of background. A lot of issues form here, specifically issues relating to parents not being able to understand or assist you through the process of going to college, enrolling in college, and getting you through the financial aid. That's all extremely new to them, and it causes an issue. An issue that later arises is that you will find that these students can't fall back on their parents for help because their parents have no idea how to assist them. At that point, they're just kind of making, in a way, it ends up, the way I described in here, was making the parents feel as if they were not good enough to assist their child and not doing well as a parent. And another issue that arises in this article is that parents unintentionally belittle the progression of their son or daughter or other situations because they can't relate to the higher education. Oftentimes the student will come off sounding condescending, or the parents just won't understand where the student's coming from. So that leads into a bit of an issue too. The phrases often said are like, "Oh, you're book smart, but you need a real world experience." And this related close to home for me personally. I'm not actually a first generation student. My mom did go to college. She's got a bachelor's degree in early childhood development. However, she went to college about 2 years before I did. So it's still very new. My grandfather actually went to college as well, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. He gave me a lot of advice and a lot of guidance and pushed me in the direction I needed to go to in order to be in grad school and college today. A lot of advice. I actually found out before he passed away that he had a master's degree in financial planning. Would never have known that. So because of him, I've been pushed in this direction and not in a negative way whatsoever. But the common theme I heard and experienced growing up was, you need to go to college, otherwise you're not going to go anywhere in life. You need a good degree, you need to go to school, you need education, blah, 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 blah. Now, whether or not this is true, or whether or not I believe this is true, is irrelevant, sorry. Yes, college has done wonders for me. My dad never got through he finished his high school education, and he was the biggest challenge. My mom was more understanding, but it caused a really big rift in the family because my dad always associates education with essentially being better than people. You think a common one I heard growing up is that it was also referenced in this article is, you think you're better than me because you've got an education, you need something that's more real life, tangible, learn how to work for your living, not just read a book. Your book smarts don't make you better than me, etc., etc. So a little bit of a dissonance coming from my father and not understanding how education plays because he himself didn't pursue that option. And also it talked a little bit about, coming from a working class, which I did, and how it influences the identity development and kind of dissonances that you come into later on throughout the article. And again, I found this being able to closely relate because a lot of times it's really hard to understand people who have, I guess in a way that, coming from working class would say, has had the silver spoon in their hand versus having to work to where they got. It's always difficult, and it has been difficult, and that's why I can say that I closely relate to this because I understand a lot of things that are happening here, and I kind of, fit that. But moving forward, we're talking about the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender College Students with Disabilities by Harley. I had a lot of questions about this article, and not because I didn't understand it. The basic premise of this article that I've understood is that they're saying there's currently a dichotic system in which LGBT and disabilities are over here. They're a separate entity. And so if a LGBT person has a disability like this, they are not getting the respect or their attention that they directly need because it's being treated as two different things. And keyword treated there because in this article it still associates LGBT as to be a diagnosis and a mental disability that they were referencing. So that's part of it, and that's the major premise of this article is to divide the two. So this one raised a lot of questions for me because in the beginning they said that they were going to the main point was to bring these two together and meld them because a person that is LGBT that has a disability has a unique attention and falls into situations like when people are being nice to them, they could mistake that as a sign of friendship because they're helping them and assisting them through anything they can, and come out to them on accident and have to not on accident because they thought they believed that person was their close friend, and not thinking they would understand their other LGBT identity, and accidentally come out, and then they have to deal with the backlash if a person isn't accepting of that part of their identity and they don't know how to process that. So what's being asserted here is the idea that Harley thinks that these two need to be melded together, and from that point forward, look at people as a dual identity development. In the article, they list 10 ways or 10 things they found through Croteau and I know it's not right, Croteau, I know it's French, and Lark on student affairs professionals and how they interact, and the 10 things they came up with. I'm not going to read them all because there's a lot, and I am already running way past time. So again, this article talked a lot and made a lot of anecdotal assertions, which I would like to have seen some, backing up of information with some of the things they're asserting, especially since in the beginning of the article they said that there's not been a whole lot of research done in regards to the dualism of that identity development. So now, since it's already almost 10 minutes in, I'm going to ask you the two questions that I've come up with for this. The first question being is, how do you think, this is relating to the first article, how do you think you as a student affairs professional can help assist a student who may be coming from a working class background and a first generation student to transition into that field, into that level of higher education, and be able to create a line of communication between their family who may not be in that in that higher education field and themselves. So essentially, what I mean is, I go home after being in college for 3 years, and now I can't have a full conversation with my parents because they can't understand me, and I come off as condescending. How would you facilitate educating that student on how to interact with their family and friends? That's my question one. The worded portion at the end is just a summarization. And question two, and is in the second article, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender College Students with Disabilities by Harley. What recommendations do you have, or do you perceive, are necessary for Valdosta State to ensure a campus climate that is warm for those who are part of the LGBT community who may also have disabilities? Now, essentially what I'm asking here is, what does Valdosta State's campus need to do in order to become more friendly towards people who may have, or who may associate with the LGBT community and have a disability, whether that be emotional, cognitive, physical impairment, what have you? How do you think Valdosta State needs to work on it? I would guide you to use some of the recommendations that were proposed on page 526, and then there are more later on in 2 pages or 3 pages following that could be a helpful benefit for you to answer that question. And as far as the last article, I didn't ask any questions from it. I have read it, and a lot of it was talking about the disabilities and then the idea of how to operate identity and establishing what identity is, and if it's an adjective or if it's just something you're consistently working to attain. So this article, I didn't have as many questions for or wanted to talk as much on, because the first 2 articles to me were much more interesting and provided a larger outlook into things, into the identity development of those who may be struggling with coming from a working class background, and those who may be disabled and also have LGBT identities. So, can't wait to see you all in class, same as always, and look forward to you all answering these 2 questions, one of the 2. Have a nice weekend, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Yeah, take it easy, guys.